Hey guys, Gaston with Rough Country. Today we're going to be installing our high clearance LED flat fender kit for the Jeep JK. Now these are a vacuum formed TPO material. They are impact and UV resistant, and they also have a recess for an LED light that comes with them. These flares fit 2 and 4-door JKs. They are a simple bolt-on process, just a little bit of drilling, and I'm going to show you exactly what's involved with that right now. All right, the first step is going to be to remove the factory fender flares and get those out of the way. Unplug this marker light harness on both ends. Set it aside. We'll be modifying it. We'll clip it here to connect our LED light. With the light harness out of the way, there are a series of bolts that connect the flare to the Jeep itself. We'll work our way around removing all of those, and then there are push pins that hold the flare as well. We'll give it a nice tug, get those to release, and get the flare out of the way. You'll notice this Jeep already has a set of Rough Country inner fender well liners in it, and that's really what's recommended with these flares. You can run the factory liners, you'll just need to modify those. I'll show you how to do that once we get this off. All right, now that I've got all the bolts removed from the factory flare, I'm gonna go ahead and remove it. Give it a little, there we go, up and out of the way. Unlike a lot of fender replacement kits, you do not have to cut this bracket, this factory bracket off with the Rough Country kit. Now, if some of these factory clips have stayed behind, we will need to remove those. You can use a panel tool or a set of dikes to get up under there, whatever you've got. Just be careful not to mar your finish. Once we do that, we'll wipe this down and get ready to pre-drill these holes to accept the Rough Country nutserts. All right, to attach the flares to the Jeep, we are going to use nutserts or riv nuts. If you're not familiar with these, I've got a video explaining what they are, as well as showing how to use our nutsert installation tool, and I'll put that link in the description of this video. Now these won't drop right into the existing holes. We are going to need to open those up a little bit. We're going to use a 27/64 drill bit. I'll go ahead and run it through those holes. We'll be able to drop these in and install them with the nutsert tool. All right, here are our 8 positions we're going to use to attach the flare on the front. Position 1, then come up. We're not going to use this existing one. Then 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the ones that are going to be drilled out and receive the riv nut. And then the remaining 3 are going to be these existing bolts that are holding in this inner liner. So we'll back those out, install the flare, and reinstall those. And then we'll take the riv nut, install it onto the tool, threads on, like so. We've got it spread out. We'll put it in place, make sure it's flush, and give it a squeeze. Reset. Tighten back up on it just a little bit to get another bite. And a squeeze again. And unthread the mandrel from the riv nut, and it is in place. Now we've got a solid secure mounting point for our flare. I'll do that 4 more times on the front, then we'll go to the back where it gets 10 and repeat the process on the passenger side. All right, now that we've got our nutserts installed, we'll go ahead and remove these 3 bolts that hold in the inner liner. and then we'll go over to the bench and I'll show you how to wire up the LED. All right, for our LED marker light, the first thing we're gonna do is run our wiring through our center hole on the flare here. We'll mount the light to the flare, and then we'll flip it up and complete the wiring using the existing marker light harness from the Jeep. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is install this double-sided foam that's cut out specifically for the back side of the marker light. We'll peel this off. We're going to thread our wires through the center hole, and then we want to be careful and make sure that we line up our screw holes on both sides. Put that down. Next, we'll go ahead and peel off the back side. We'll take this over to the flare here. We're going to run our wires through this center hole. Thread those all the way in. And then before we put the light into place, because this is double-sided tape, I'm going to go ahead and get our bolts ran through. That way we can ensure our alignment is correct. Reach under here, grab these wires, give them a pull, and line up my bolt holes. Press that foam. Now we'll flip it over, install our washers, install our lock nuts, and wire up our harness. All right, so we'll take a flat washer, get that in place, then we'll grab a line lock nut, spin that on, do the same for the other bolt. And then we'll tighten those down. All right, now we're going to wire up the LED. So I've got the factory harness here. The gray or tan plug is what goes to the light itself. So we're going to cut that and wire in the leads for our LED. Now I want to reuse the factory wire loom to make the installation look as sanitary as possible. So I'm going to figure out about where I need to cut the factory harness. I'm going to come in, and you can solder and shrink wrap your connections. I'm going to butt splice them. So I'm going to stagger them. That way I'll cut one approximately here. Then I'll come up about the length of the connector and cut. That way it's not as bulky and it should still fit into the wire loom. Remove that. And I'm gonna insert our leads and bring them out the split. Now you can pop this loose and retape it, but just trying to avoid that. We'll strip all these back, put the connectors in, and get them crimped up. All right, now that I've got our connections crimped up, we'll go ahead and tuck these back into the loom. We'll be ready to install our flare. All right, and because we watched the length of our wires and we're able to get everything back in the loom, The connection looks nice and factory. It's going to plug right into the factory marker light location, and we're ready to install our flare. Okay, so I'll set the flare in place. We've got some hardware and Allen wrenches. It's just a matter of installing our bolts and washers along the 5 locations where we added the riv nuts and the 3 locations that connect to the inner fender liner. Then we'll route our wire into the engine compartment and plug in the LED marker light. All right, now I'll line my hole up and install the first bolt, thread it into the riv nut. And just like with anything that has multiple mounting locations, we're going to leave all of these fairly loose until they're installed. Then we'll go around and tighten them up. Fender is fully installed. Now I am routing the wiring harness into the engine compartment so that I can connect the marker light. And since we used the factory harness, it's going to plug right in, just like that. All right, before we move on to the back flare, let's turn on the parking lights and make sure all our connections are good. All right, that's what we were looking for. Now we can get on to the rear. So our rear factory flare is held on with clips. I'll go ahead and maneuver those out as best I can and give it a nice tug, remove it. We'll clean off the surface, put in our 10 riv nuts, and install our rough country rear flare. All right, our mounting points in the rear are all going to use a riv nut. There are 10 of them. I'll go ahead and get those drilled out just like I did the front, install the riv nuts, and put the flare in place. While I'm thinking about it, if you like this no fender look, you can check out Rough Country's Fender Delete kit for the JK. I'll put the link in the description for that as well. All right, I'm done with the nutsert tool for now. We've got all 10 installed on the JK. I've got my hardware right here. So now we'll go ahead and grab the flare and install it. And that's going to complete the installation of the Rough Country high clearance LED flat fender flare kit. Let's get to it. Again, you're going to want to leave these loose until you get them all started. Then you can go around and tighten them down. With the rear installed, that completes the installation of the Rough Country high clearance LED flat fender flare kit. But if you remember, I said I was going to show you how to modify the factory wheel wells to work with these. Again, we've got the Rough Country inner liners in, and that's what we recommend, but maybe you're just not ready to put those in yet. So I've got a factory flare here. I'm going to flip it over, And this lip is what we need. So we're gonna cut along here and along here. And my marker's giving out on me, but there we go. Now we're bleeding. We're gonna cut all that. And once we do that, we will have three mounting points for bolts that we can reinstall this into the Jeep. And then we've got 3 mounting points for push pins that are gonna hold the factory liner in place. Now, as far as the liner itself goes, I've got one here that I've already cut. What you're gonna need to do is put the liner in place with the flare off, see what is left outside of the wheel well, and you're gonna trim that. So initially, this is what the liner looked like. And if I were to do it again, I would trim along here, then I would drop into this pocket and trim along this line. And that way this will come up and cover a portion that's not covered by the flare itself. Again, this is just a modification that you can make if you want to. We recommend using an inner fender liner with these flares, but if you're not ready to go that far yet, this is an option. Boy, these fender flares really look great on this Jeep. They accent the angular rough country bumper and overall just really set it off. The blacked out LED looks great with the black Jeep, but let's take a look at these flares on a red Jeep so we can really appreciate how well they stand out. So that's all it takes to install the high clearance LED flat fender flare kit on the Jeep JK. For these and many other Jeep accessories, no matter what year or model, be sure to check out roughcountry.com.